So Psalm 119 is the longest psalm in the Psalter, as we call it, the lists of psalms. As you can imagine, 175 or so verses, maybe 180. And what's it all about? It's all about the psalmist delighting in and praising God's law, which would have included the Mosaic law and not just the Ten Commandments. But for us, I think, we can relate to it because of the Ten Commandments. Uh, so I'm going to share a couple things with you. First of all, some of the quotations. I hate the double minded, but I love your law. The double minded would be those who are of two minds about whether or not they want to obey God's law. You know how that feels. This is the famous quotation from Psalm 119. Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. That I think we can also relate to. If your law had not been my delight, I would have perished in my affliction. I will never forget your precepts, for by them you have given me life. Note, this is repeated throughout this psalm. The psalmist has suffered affliction and has been comforted by the law of God. Now, that seems strange to us because, of course, we think of law, it's just more rules to follow. But that's not what the psalmist is saying. He says, forever, O Lord, your word is firmly fixed in the heavens. In other words, he means the law of God. He means the law of God is cosmic. It is as much a part of reality as the law of physics, the laws of physics, or mathematics. Your law is firmly fixed in the heavens. I'm just opening up to you. I mean, I could find dozens of these because this psalm is so long. Their heart is unfeeling, like fat. But I delight in your law. It is good for me that I was afflicted, that I might learn your statutes. The law of your mouth is better to me than thousands of gold and silver pieces. And again, we've talked about fatness of the heart, dullness of the heart, hardness of heart. Couple more little quotes, and then I want to show you something else that may really help. I will run in the way of your commandments when you enlarge my heart. Again, the reference to the heart as being the center or the soul of man. Enlarge my heart, make me able to have more capacity for you and your law, Lord. I am a sojourner on the earth. Hide not your commandments from me. My soul is confused with longing for your rules at all times. Is consumed. My soul is consumed with longing for your rules at all times. But when would we ever say that? Oh, Lord, I love your commandments. I love the things you tell us to do. I even love the precepts of the church. My soul is on fire for them. They really gave me consolation when I was suffering. We wouldn't think like that. For one thing, the Mosaic law is no longer part of what we do as Christians. But if you think of this as the great moral law, the great law of truth, the great law of what gives life meaning, that's ultimately what the psalmist is talking about. So let me share something else. I may have talked about this in previous classes. This is from a book by Peter Kraft, and it's about Christianity, and he writes it as a conversation between two women. It's a pretty interesting book, and as I say, I may have shared this with you guys in previous semesters, but it doesn't hurt to share it again because this is a dialogue between two women, a fictional dialogue, and they're arguing about things like the Ten Commandments. The first one says, so we're not talking about religious faith here, which is what some people believe. We're talking about morality, which is what all people know. And that, I say, is ultimately what the psalmist is talking about. The other woman says, fine. So we all know some basic moral principles. How does that apply to love? Because this book is about how God is love and so forth. The first woman says, that's what those principles are. The principles of love. Well, I guess that makes sense. If they're the principles for living your whole life, then they must apply to love too. No, not love too as an afterthought. That's their whole point. The commandments, meaning the Ten Commandments, the law of God, are for love. And love is for life. That's why the commandments are for life. They describe love. Love does not kill. Thou shalt not kill. Love does not steal. Thou shalt not steal. Love does not bear false witness. Thou shalt not bear false witness. Love does not commit adultery, etc. Oh, but love does commit adultery. It happens all the time. Not real love. Not unadulterated love. Oh, gotcha. And love worships, and love takes a Sabbath, and love respects parents, and love doesn't worship idols or fake gods, any kind of fake gods. Love is not fake. Love is authentic. Love is true. Love is real. That's what the commandments are all about. I never looked at it that way. I think that's a wonderful passage because as we talked about yesterday from 1 John, God is love. And really, if you get overwhelmed in this class at all of the stuff that we've got to read, and if today your eyes were glossing over reading all of these verses in Psalm 119, by the way, it's an acrostic. Each section is written beginning with a letter of the Hebrew alphabet. At any rate, if you get overwhelmed, go back to what it's all supposed to be about. Not just the Bible, going to Mass, practicing your faith. Everything you do as a Christian should be about learning how to love. Because the more we understand God, and we do that through studying Scripture, and the more we understand our own makeup, for instance, people do horrible things in the Bible, the more we know what we're capable of and the evil that we can do in this life by studying history and Scripture and so forth, and the news of the day. The more we know these things, the more we understand how love is what saves us, and that this is the perfect emblem of and action of love. That's what the law of God is ultimately about. The 10 Commandments are ways of showing us how to love. The Mosaic Law, the 631 or however many there were that Moses added on to that, those were things that were ultimately fulfilled by Christ and were helping the development as the people of God moved closer toward him. But the core of it is learning how to love. Love God with all your mind, heart, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. That's what this class is about. That's what your faith is about. That's what the Bible is about. And that's ultimately what Psalm 119 is about. But just imagine for a minute. This psalmist was taking delight in the law of God, which included for him not eating pork, which included certain things you couldn't do if you were unclean, if you came upon a dead body by accident. All of these bizarre rules and regulations, nevertheless, strange as they seem to us, he delighted in them. And we can do the same if we recognize that they're part of the foundation of the heavens, as Psalm 119 says. They're part of the structure of the cosmos, and they're the key to how we can find meaning, love, and happiness in our lives.